Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, at one point in time, it all seemed so certain, didn't it? The government was telling us there's no question that the guilty party are the Russians for what happened in Salisbury. Indeed, on the 22nd of March, the Foreign Office put out a tweet that said, analysis by world-leading experts at the Defence, Science and Technology Laboratory at Porton Down made clear that this was a military-grade Novichok nerve agent produced in Russia. Well, there you are. And then, just to make sure we all fully understood the point, here was Boris Johnson on the 24th of March speaking on German television.
When I look at the evidence, I mean, the people from Porton Down, the laboratory.
So they have the samples.
They do, and they were absolutely categorical. And I asked the guy myself. I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "There's no doubt." So we have very little alternative but to take the action that we have taken.
So there we are. It was absolutely categorical. And I think it was words like that, and indeed the Prime Minister's response to, that led many other countries in the international community to say, well, clearly, if the Brits tell us this is an absolute slam-dunk cert, we'd better support them. And then, of course, it all turned a bit funny, didn't it? Because yesterday, Gary Aitkenhead, the boss of Porton Down, said there is no evidence to say that this material was produced in Russia. And then today, the Foreign Office deleted the tweet they'd posted on the 22nd of March saying that it was produced in Russia. So the Foreign Office, having told us with certainty, backed up with the Foreign Secretary, that there was no question this was produced in Russia, have now deleted that tweet, which of course has allowed Jeremy Corbyn to hit back.
Boris Johnson said on German television in categorical terms that he'd been told by experts that the Novichok came from Russia and therefore the Russian state was guilty of it. Well, Porton Down has not confirmed it came from Russia. They've confirmed it's of a Russian type. That's all they've done. They could not confirm anything else. The Foreign Office put out a tweet in support of the Foreign Secretary's claim on German television, which they then removed yesterday. So it begins to look, more than begins, is looking as though the Foreign Secretary made a statement that is not backed up by evidence and not backed up by the sources that he claimed in Porton Down could back it up. I think the Foreign Secretary needs to answer some questions very rapidly on this.
Well, we indeed last night on this show were saying that Boris needs to answer some questions. That was before this tweet had been deleted. Jeremy Corbyn challenging the Foreign Secretary directly, and the Foreign Secretary has responded. Boris has said it is lamentable that Jeremy Corbyn is now playing Russia's game and trying to discredit the UK over the Salisbury attack. Remember the key facts. 1. Porton Down identified nerve agent as military-grade Novichok. 2. Russia has investigated delivering nerve agents likely for assassination. And 3, Russia has the motive for targeting Sergei Skripal. And Boris concludes, 28 other countries have been so convinced by the UK case that they've expelled Russians. In contrast, Corbyn chooses to side with the Russian spin machine. Well, yes, Boris, you're quite right. 28 other countries have expelled diplomats. Indeed, America have got rid of 60. But it was done because you told the world it was categorical. And now Porton Down say it absolutely is not. And I'm wondering, through all of this, as these weeks go by, is the government's handling of this investigation damaging your faith in government? And equally, do you think Boris Johnson has got more questions to answer? If, like me, you think deleting this tweet makes people distrust big government departments and indeed the Foreign Secretary, then call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, OK, they may have jumped the gun a bit, but they're probably still right. Then text to 84850. And maybe you have got some questions you'd like to ask Boris. let me know what they are. Tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and watch us on Facebook. I'm live from here in Washington, D.C., where a lot is happening here today. John on Facebook says, I knew they were wrong. Robert says, no, I never had any faith in our government before that. Tony says, Corbyn proved right again. Evelyn says, losing all my faith in our Tory government. I have to say, the one thing that has struck me over the course of the last month, as this saga unfolds, is the extent to which an increasing number of you call this programme, text it, tweet it, and say, you have lost faith in our leaders. When they stand up and say something to us, you simply don't believe what they're saying. Well, I guess there's always been the guy in the corner of the saloon bar who wanted to rubbish everything. But has their handling of this, and in particular, telling us, at one point that it's categorical, then telling us there is no direct evidence, is your faith in government being diminished by their behaviour? And in particular, by the way Boris has behaved throughout this. I'm going to ask Rudy, who's calling from Exeter, that very question. Good evening, Rudy.
Yeah, hi Nigel. We spoke a few weeks ago, if you remember, when we came up to the conclusion of the diplomatic bag. And
I do.
Yeah,
I do. And actually, Rudy, I think that's still, if it was the Russians what done it, the use of diplomatic bags, I think we really came across something there that could well be the answer. But hey, how do you see it now?
Well, the thing is this, right, Nigel? The way I look at it is, right, they should have learned a lesson from when it was Tony Blair with their weapons of mass destruction and so on. And I know people say that the English couldn't possibly do it, but there's still a question mark over Dr. David Kelly. But putting that to one side, the main thing is this, right? They keep going back on their word about Brexit and lying and then promising and then not delivering. So if you're going to do it on a small thing, you'll do it on a big thing, is my belief. So how can you have faith in this government if they can't even deliver on Brexit, to deliver on something
but Rudy, But Rudy, with Brexit, all they have to do is to convince the UK electorate. With this, they've convinced 28 countries across the world to expel Russian diplomats. Would they really have done this? Would they really have done this without the evidence?
Well, think about it. It's in the interest of those 28 countries to do that because they want to, it's called auto-suggestion, where they want people to believe that we're going to be better in the United States of Europe against Russia as a combined...
Yeah. No, I see that, Rudy. I understand that, and actually many people in Brussels want to use this as a reason why Britain must stay part of the EU. Rudy, I thank you. Someone that's following this very closely. Let's try Jez in Enfield. Jez, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. Hi. Yeah, I was just saying to your producer, I said, it's just made, we look like the clowns of the world now. Britain used to be a country with savvy politicians, and it seems like... a sort of private school education that gives you absolutely no common sense whatsoever, and they can they're just absolutely unbelievable. I think they consider that everyone else is plebs. Boris Johnson should be sacked. He should have been sacked ages ago for his complete incompetence. The guy's he might be an intelligent guy who can speak Latin and God knows how many other languages, but I don't think he's got a modicum of common sense whatsoever, because I don't think they can teach you that. And I just don't know, how does he keep his job? He's clueless, like most of the politicians. Absolutely clueless.
So, Jez, as far as you're concerned, it isn't Theresa May, it's Boris that you now see as the villain of this piece, yeah?
Well, come on, tonight, she's clueless as well. She goes into an election and mentions fox hunting. How stupid can you get? It's never going to go down well, is it? It was like she wanted to lose it.
Well, she did a good job of trying to. I'll give you that. So basically, you think Boris should go, Jez?
He should have gone a long time ago. He's incompetent. You put him under pressure, and you can see his true colours because he gets very arrogant and rude. He might have, an ulterior, but he hasn't got an ounce of common sense. Like I said, he might be an intelligent. Go on.
And Jez, when someone like you rings up, who clearly follows this stuff, and says, basically you've got no confidence in any of our leaders. What does this do to our What does this do, Jez, to our democracy?
What democracy? We haven't got a democracy. It's all a fake. It's all false. A democracy where we vote to leave a country, and they try to, by hook or by crook, telling us we didn't know this, we didn't know that, and trying to twist it all round to try to change things. There isn't a democracy in this country. The elite root people of this country think they know better than everybody else, and they're just trying to push their will on us because of their bloody motives in business all the time. That's what it is. I think it's capitalism.
If they keep on going, Jez, if they keep on going, and people start feeling about them increasingly the way that you are, then Brexit may just be the first of many shocks they've got to come. I thank you very much indeed. I think you are being disingenuous about the Novichok. Boris said specialists had categorical proof that it came from Russia. He didn't say Porton Down were the specialists advising the Foreign Office. Well, I think actually, whoever you are, he did, because that original tweet said, analysis by the world-leading experts at Porton Down made clear this military-grade Novichok was produced in Russia. So they were pretty clear about it. They're now rowing back in all sorts of ways. And frankly, Boris's defence is now simply to attack Jeremy Corbyn. Hi, Nigel. What does this foolish man Boris Johnson have to do to be sacked by Theresa May? Corbyn was right to urge caution. May is too weak to sack Johnson, says Peter in Guildford. Well, so far, some of you are calling for Boris to be sacked. Tell me they're wrong. Tell me Boris is a great chap who will emerge from this crisis as the next potential Prime Minister. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
The young woman who died in her mother's arms takes the death toll in London to 48 this year. Katrina French, who's chair of MOPAC's Pan-London Stop and Search Community Monitoring Network.
We've had the race audit that has shown that being black in this country is incredibly difficult.
You continue to monitor Stop and Search. You continue to help new to the police. And you continue to, like me, mourn when you hear that another person from a non-white community has been stabbed or shot. Or you do it the American way, which is where you crack down on crime.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With The Times. Be not just informed, but well informed.
Buddy will go to any lengths to fetch. So, Buddy, go forth and do your thing. And Pets in a Pickle Pet Insurance will make sure you're protected through high-speed chases, mid-air collisions, and beyond. Get a free quote today at petsinnapickle.co.uk.
Even if you only employ one person, you have to provide a workplace pension. It's the law. Get to know your responsibilities with help from the pensions regulator. Visit workplacepensions.gov.uk.
Finally, it's spring. The days are getting longer. Time to gather friends and fire up the barbecue. Take the guesswork out of barbecuing this year with the Weber iGrill. The iGrill thermometer connects to an app on your phone. Simply tell it what you're cooking, how you'd like it cooked, and the iGrill will tell you when your food is ready. Now you can claim an iGrill 3 for free when you buy a Weber Genesis 2 gas barbecue. Offer valid until the 15th of April. Participating stores, conditions apply. Visit Weber.com for more information.
At the third stroke, the time sponsored by Cunard will be any time you like. Time to stop. Time to relax. Time to indulge. Time to love. Showtime. Time for a voyage with Cunard.
We've been thinking about Janice and how she's got a lot on her plate. So when she leaves her phone behind after tasting 6 different wedding cakes, including one called Vanilla Vogue, she's more worried about squeezing into her dress than whether her mobile banking information is safe. That's because the NatWest Secure app comes with Face ID login to help you feel safe whenever you bank with us. Search NatWest Secure app. NatWest. We are what we do.
App eligibility criteria apply. Face ID login available on iPhone 10.
Great. Another ad. When's the music back on? Good news is you might not need to listen to this, because we're about to talk funerals. So if you want to turn down the volume, that's fine by us. If you do need to plan a funeral, we're sorry to hear that. And we want you to know we're here. like we have been for generations. At the heart of your community, available all day, every day, to do right by them, right by your family, and right by you. Co-op Funeral Care.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Well, Boris and the Foreign Office are very much on the back foot, having told us in the third week of March that categorically this was a Russian material that had been used in Salisbury. Now that tweet has been deleted and Boris appears to be quite considerably on the back foot, his defence now being to attack Jeremy Corbyn's motives. Meanwhile, talking of Russia, here in Washington, D.C. today, the Washington Post report that Special Counsel Robert S. Mueller, remember he's the guy doing this big investigation here to find out whether the Russians unduly influenced the election of President Trump. But now, President Trump's attorneys have been informed that whilst the investigation will continue, the president himself is no longer a criminal target. Now, they may try and go after the president for potential obstruction of justice. But whilst Mueller still reiterates the need to interview the president, he will do so with the president as a witness and not as a suspect. And just as we see back in the United Kingdom, all sorts of crackpot, fanciful theories about the Russians interfering because the Russians are the enemy, that's worth remembering. Frankly, I think what this shows now, with Trump being downgraded by Mueller to being simply a witness, says to me the whole thing has been the most gigantic hoax and complete waste of money. Meanwhile, the other fascinating news today is the row this week has been about the caravan of people from Honduras making their way up through Mexico to try and get through into the USA. And Trump yesterday saying, in the absence of a wall, he was going to send in the army. Now we learn from AFP news agency this afternoon that the migrant caravan that infuriated Trump have now abandoned plans to travel to the USA. And that is actually a very big, considerable win for Trump. And I know a lot of you out there criticise me for being too on the side of the president. Well, my answer to that is someone's got to be, because virtually everybody else is against him. But worth noting that his approval rating this week is now at 50%, which is 4% higher than Obama was at a comparable period back in 2010. Trump over here is doing pretty well. Back to Boris, back to our faith in government. I'm going to ask Joe in Brighton. Joe, does your trust in our leaders diminish with each week that goes by?
Completely diminish. It's my third time, and I've got to say something at the beginning. I think everyone has begun to warm to you because they've actually heard it from the horse's mouth, you know? And I think you're doing a good job, and I think you'd be the ideal person to interview Jeremy Corbyn. So I think you should try and pursue him, because I think you two think alike. Slightly different, but I think you think alike. What I want to say, I think...
Tell you what, Joe, I tell you what we'll do. On the back of your recommendation, I will send a personal invitation, all right?
I think he will do the interview with you, because I think you're fair. You're pretty fair. The media image is not what I see after listening to you now for a while. But anyway, this is what I want to say. I think Gavin Williamson, Amber Rudd and Boris are a threat to national security. Gavin Williamson and Boris, they talk loose. They don't think out their thoughts before making it public. Amber Rudd is not fighting the obvious. I mean, we have a lot of money in this country. All our issues to do with drugs and threat to, you know, the country in general starts at the border. We have £1 billion. We could easily recruit people on boats to watch the coast at night. It would stop a lot of drugs coming into Poole Harbour and Hull and all the rest of them. They just don't want to do it. And the funny thing, Nigel, when there's an issue of like a terrorist bomb goes off, they say it costs 600 million for that day. So if it costs 600 million, you would think you would put $1 billion to protect the border.
Yeah, well, you would, wouldn't you?
Sense.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree with that, Joe. I don't disagree with that. But, Joe, let me ask you something. You know, if our faith in our leaders is diminishing, and my sense, certainly from this show and being out and about, is that our faith is diminishing, what does that mean for the whole democratic process in Britain going forward?
I think it's in disaster zone, yeah, and we're dealing with someone, accusing someone who talks passionately. You never hear Theresa May call Britain Mother Britain. You hear Macron mention his passion about France, but he's asset stripping France the same way. Well, in a way, what's happened over with Blair and Cameron, and I think it's all down to this free market thinking is why we're walking into all these traps. I believe in free market, but I don't believe at any price, and I think they apply to everything they do. And I just think there's no idea of what they're doing. We've got people who have no background in defence, no background in foreign affairs.
No background, Joe, in defence, no background in business, no background in charity, no background in serving themselves in the military or the police force. They're all career politicians, Joe, and that, I think, is a big problem.
Not only that, Nigel, I've heard all day, yeah, because I'm self-employed. I've heard all day people saying, "Oh, we should automatically believe them." I'm not going into conspiracy theories, but all I'm saying here is that you were dealing with a country what has kept out of more devious ways of doing what they do in the world than what we and America have done. And if you look at going back to Mark Thatcher when he tried to overthrow a government. That's happening every day.
Be a bit careful about that, but yeah, okay. No, Joe, be a little bit careful about that. Joe, I take your point. I'm going to move on. I'm going to go to Jazz from Crawley, who's a new caller to the show. Good evening, Jazz.
Good evening, Nigel. I'm so pleased for Donald Trump. That's for one thing. Vindication of Russian collusion.
Thank goodness. Yeah. Well, maybe then, maybe soon, Jazz, they'll stop saying Brexit was because of the Russians as well. Who knows?
Who knows, mate? Anything's possible in this chapter. Anyway, what I'd like to say is that I think that the media are quite complicit in this, and most of our serving MPs are all complicit in this, all jumping on the bandwagon. LBC didn't stop talking about Russian collusion and all this kind of business for 24, 36 hours all over the weekend. And when there isn't anything to actually show, nobody actually comes out and says, well, I'm sorry, we were wrong, and
I know
our callers are right. Including yourself, Nigel. You're still Russia bashing. Actually, I'd say most of our British media are Russia-phobic. It's awful. It really is. We have no good relations with the rest of the world now. And, all these countries that actually said...
Isn't that Jazz interesting? Because her relationship with the European Union is clearly very difficult for obvious reasons. Her relationship with Donald Trump is, frankly, pretty icy. We haven't moved forward. I mean, we're not really getting many mates out there at the moment, are we?
Absolutely no one. Honestly, it's appalling to even think about what our future's going to be in this world. We might as well just become, I don't know, Bangladesh But Jazz, they did get support over the expulsion of Russian diplomats because 28 countries did for once support Britain by expelling diplomats because Boris said it was categorical. And now we're told it's... Nigel.
So I wonder... They are NATO members, but I wonder, Jazz, given the deleting of this tweet today, etc., I wonder what some of the other governments who've removed diplomats on the basis of what the Brits said, I wonder what they're thinking about us tonight.
Well, did you actually, yesterday, Donald Trump had a meeting with Estonia, Lithuania, and
Latvia.
Did you watch that?
A little bit of it, yeah, I did.
Yeah, they didn't. They hardly mentioned Russia in that. Only very minor. They mentioned Russia. So you can see that the narrative is going to change here. Where again, we're just going to be known as nut jobs, really.
Nut jobs. All right, Jess. Thank you for your call. Loads of comments. Nigel, what puzzles me is why so many Brits are so pro-Russian. says Kate. Well, I'm not sure that many Brits are pro-Russian, but certainly most of our political figures seem to be very, very anti-Russian. With regard to scientists, Nigel, if you look at the wording of their original statement, which was produced after long negotiations, it does not say Johnson may and the self-anointed journalists say it did. It was carefully phrased to fall short of blaming Russia. Well, William, I don't think the Foreign Secretary could have been clearer when he used the word categorical. And actually, if you look at the wording of that original tweet, the one that's now been deleted, they made it very, very clear, did they not, that this was, and I'm quoting directly to you, this was a military-grade Novichok nerve agent produced in Russia. That's what the Foreign Office told us on the 22nd of March, backed up big time by the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister, and now they're saying something very different. Moshi says, common sense says the Russians are responsible, the rest is smoking mirrors. Moshi, you may well be right. There may well be circumstantial, historical evidence pointing to Russia, or at least, as I've always said, I do believe it's a Russian actor. But why go further? Why say you've got categorical proof of this? Why convince the rest of the international community to back us on this when actually you haven't got the evidence? Don't then be surprised if faith in our leadership and our governments falls, and maybe Britain's standing in the world, which went up briefly with all of this, could diminish pretty quickly too. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive at LBC. It's now 7:30 and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
Boris Johnson has accused Jeremy Corbyn of choosing to side with the Russian spin machine over the Salisbury nerve agent attack. It's after the Labour leader suggested the Foreign Secretary exaggerated evidence from the UK's chemical weapons lab. Buckingham Palace says the Duke of Edinburgh has undergone a successful hip operation in London. He's said to be comfortable and in good spirits at King Edward VII Hospital in Marylebone. A 78-year-old man arrested on suspicion of murdering an intruder is still being held by police. Officers say he's being questioned about the death of an alleged burglar who was found in the street in South London with stab wounds. LBC weather, rain and some hill snow moving across southern England tonight. Most places staying dry by the morning with a touch of frost, a low of -2.
LBC travel. On the M25, there are delays in both directions between Junction 24 for Potters Bar and Junction 25 for Enfield. The inside lane is closed for repair work. This is after an accident. It's looking very heavy on the approach. In Kidbrooke, it's queuing on the A2 southbound between the Blackwall Tunnel approach and the Sun in the Sands roundabout. Delays back to the Woolwich flyover. This is after a car broke down earlier on this afternoon. And on the tubes, there are severe delays on the Metropolitan line between Aldgate and Harrow on the Hill. This is because of a signal failure. LBC Travel, I'm Louise Gookie.
This is LBC.
Hello, drivers. Like saving money? How about time? If you answered yes, you should visit Confused.com, where we guarantee to beat your car insurance renewal quote. And if we can't, we'll give you the difference plus £20. Yes, 20 whole pounds. Can you smell that? That's the scent of an offer you simply can't refuse. Or maybe it's that dainty Christmas tree air freshener dangling from your rearview mirror. Either way, drivers win at Confused.com. Full T's and C's online. Single annual policies only.
Divorce. It threatens the things you've worked hard for in more ways than you can imagine. Your home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. Don't let divorce cost you any more than it has to. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
Finally, it's spring. The days are getting longer. Time to gather friends and fire up the barbecue. Take the guesswork out of barbecuing this year with the Weber iGrill. The iGrill thermometer connects to an app on your phone. Simply tell it what you're cooking, how you'd like it cooked, and the iGrill will tell you when your food is ready. Now you can claim an iGrill 3 for free when you buy a Weber Genesis 2 gas barbecue. Offer valid until the 15th of April. Participating stores, conditions apply. Visit weber.com for more information.
Block management. Two very simple words. But what do they actually mean? Well, there's budget approval for starters, then service charge invoices, health and safety paperwork, cleaning, gardening, maintenance, inspections, contracts, insurance, emergency call-outs, and a whole lot more besides.
So for complete block management solutions, just remember 3 simple letters: ABC. ABC Estates will take care of all your day-to-day management, leaving you as happy as Larry. See abcestates.co.uk or call 0800 888 6688.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Live from Washington. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Well, the Foreign Office deletes the tweet. Boris Johnson's on the back foot. We're no longer saying that it is absolutely categorical that this nerve agent used in Salisbury was produced in Russia. And I'm asking you, what does that do to our faith in government and our leaders? But before I get there, I wonder about our faith in our own civil service, because a Home Office official was at the centre of a £6 million conspiracy which allowed hundreds of illegal immigrants into this country. Shamsu Iqbal, 61, was the linchpin of a gang which exploited his trusted position in the Foreign Office to falsify records for at least 437 people. 4 people were involved in this. They've all been found guilty, and they face maximum jail sentences of 14 years. Goodness me, I hope they get it. And it all came to light when the ringleader Iqbal was discovered to have over £1 million in cash sitting in his current account, which, given his salary of £23,000 a year from the Home Office, clearly looked wrong. We do need to have a civil service we can trust. This is an horrendous case. We'll find out what the sentencing is when it comes and report back to you. But back to our faith in government, back to Boris backtracking and now hitting back hard at Corbyn, and loads of opinions here. Mike says the disgusting aspect of this is Corbyn's support of Russia. Well, Corbyn has always been quite supportive of Russia. Barry says, I lost faith in government years ago. This is just another example of incompetence in a very long line. And Emily thinks the case has made me lose faith in the media to reject propaganda and the general population's ability to identify fake news. Well, Emily, I tell you what, I've heard lots and lots of sceptical voices on this show ever since Boris and Theresa told us it was the Russians what done it. And they've made these claims, and they've got the international community behind them without actually having the evidence. They told us they did. They're now not so sure. And one or two people here questioning me. Corbyn was made privy to sensitive intelligence material by virtue of his position as shadow leader, as well as the EU leaders to Theresa May. All were convinced, apart from Corbyn and the naysayers, yourself included, Nigel. What does this say about Corbyn's motives and your own? Puzzled, says Chris of Manchester. Chris, I see the West, the European Union, some big elements in America too, who constantly want Russia to be the bogeyman. And the more Russia's the bogeyman, the more the argument is we must stay very close to a European Union foreign policy and military policy. I have always said I would not want to live myself in Putin's Russia, the way they behave, the things they do. I still, Chris, don't doubt. I think it's more than likely that it was a Russian actor. I am personally still not convinced that Putin sanctioned this. I cannot see what he had to gain from it on the eve of the World Cup. That's my view. Jason is calling from Spalding. Jason, do you think Boris Johnson comes out of this lot well?
I don't think he comes out of it particularly well, Nigel. But I'm no fan of the Conservatives. In fact, up until the last election, I hadn't voted Conservative for many, many years because I voted for you. But I went back to the Conservatives at the last election for the fear of having somebody like Jeremy Corbyn in power and the likes of John McDonnell and Diane Abbott. But when you look at the Novichok situation, if we go back a few years ago, we had Alexander Litvinenko, of which everybody pointed the fingers at Russia and at Putin in particular, but the Blair government didn't push it. We look at 14, I understand the British police have been instructed to reopen 14 cases of mysterious Russian deaths in the UK. Either Russian citizens. The one thing they all have in common is they're all dissidents and they're all anti-Putin individuals who have been found dead in a variety of different methods and manners. And we seem to gloss over the fact that Skripal's son and daughter in the last 3 or 4 years have also died under what I understand were mysterious and interesting circumstances. And then we have a poisoning using what everybody has said is a military-grade nerve agent, designed and developed in Russia. And I think the point that is being missed here is that the Porton Down statement actually said a state actor was involved, not a Russian actor, a state actor. Now, based on that, you don't make it in your test kitchen at home or in a laboratory in a school. I wonder which state actors might Porton Down have been doing, because my understanding of these things is it doesn't come out saying made in Russia or made somewhere else.
Sure.
It simply says these things look like and smell like it is. And in all real terms, in the real world, is it looks like and smells like it probably is the Russians. And
well, Jason, that may be true. That may be true, Jason, but is it? And by the way, just to sort of really get this clear again, the tweet that was put up on the 22nd of March and was removed yesterday by the Foreign Office said this was a military-grade Novichok nerve agent produced in Russia. They couldn't have been clearer. They told us it was produced.
Yep.
You know, and now they're saying they haven't got the evidence for it. So what the hell's going on, Jason? All I'm saying is, the government could have said, look, all the evidence points to this being Russia, but in order to convince the rest of the international community, Boris took it further and used the word categorical when, Jason, I'm suggesting to you it was not right to use that word.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that. But if you are then sitting there with evidence that you can see but perhaps can't put out into the public domain and all the finger points then at the Russians, how then as a nation state do you respond to that and find cross-ally support to strengthen your own position? I believe our allies have seen much, much stronger evidence than we're able to put into the public domain. I could be entirely wrong with that, but I don't suspect that I am. And that has garnered the international support that has been seen.
Do you know what? Do you know what, Jason? If we'd shared some big intelligence secret with 28 other nations, I think we'd know about it. I genuinely do.
I'm not necessarily certain we would know about it, but we could disagree with that. But coming back to a point you made earlier on about career politicians, and this is where I think we do have a major problem in this country and around the world, is that, you know, you have been vilified in the press, as you well know, but I've been a huge supporter of yours. And then we look at somebody like Sir Michael Fallon, who perhaps at this point in time we might really have wanted to be our Secretary of State for Defence and maybe a future Prime Minister of this country, but apparently he had to step down because he might have touched a reporter's knee. So what we look for is we look for whiter than white, pure and pure politicians who don't represent real life and the real world. And eventually you get what you sow. And we could have Corbyn as a career politician, because that's exactly what he is, or the press could stop getting on the back of people like Sir Michael Fallon and one or two others, and we could actually have a better quality of politician in this country, rather than the bland...
Well, I tell you what, Jason, the one thing America did was to reject career politics and to go for the Donald. And whether you love him or hate him, warts and all, he definitely is not a career politician. And I would like to think we would finish up with more personalities with real experience of life in this profession. I really, really would. Stephen is calling from Putney and a new caller to LBC. Stephen, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Farage. I would like to ask you a question. Do you believe that the Russian state was responsible for poisoning Alexander Litvinenko in 2005?
More than likely, yes.
Well, in that case, why would you be so sceptical about the involvement in the Russian state in the poisoning of Mr. Gripal, given that Mr. Gripal, like Alexander Litvinenko, is a traitor, and traitors were actually threatened by Putin in 2010 when he said that
they
choked on their 30 pieces of silver, and the Duma has actually approved legislation to allow Russia to assassinate its enemies abroad. Now, you said a moment ago, well, it might have been Russia possibly, but I can't believe it's Mr. Putin. Why not? Do you actually think that people can get hold of nerve gas without his permission? Has Russia actually lost control of their own stock?
Well, a lot of it, we're told, went missing back in 1993. Litvinenko, of course, was working very closely with Boris Berezovsky, who was one of Putin's absolute mortal enemies. So Litvinenko, I believe, got caught up in all of that. And you're quite right, Stephen, to say that these people are seen as traitors because they gave information to the West. And I haven't said it's not the Russian government that have done it. I've just said if it was them, why the hell would they do it now, Stephen? What did they possibly have to gain? Litvinenko was involved with Berezovsky. To our knowledge, Skripal has been living quietly in Salisbury, not doing very much for many, many years. So, Stephen, I think it's more than likely this stuff did come from Russia. I think it's more than likely that a Russian actor did it. But I do think it's absolutely irresponsible of a British government to tell us absolutely, certainly, categorically that it was when they haven't got the evidence.
They didn't. Theresa May said in the Houses of Parliament that it was highly likely, extremely probable that it was the Russian state. And this was not just based on the fact that the poison was identified as Novichok, and Novichok was actually designed by the Russians, but on other information as well. All the circumstantial evidence, namely that the Russians had done this before, they'd have every reason to go for Skripal. People like Skripal have been threatened, but also on the basis of presumably of secret intelligence, which they've obviously shown to some, but not all, of our European partners.
Well,
because at one point,
if they have that intelligence, if they have that intelligence, Stephen, they wouldn't be taking down tweets today. Look, I understand what you're saying. Theresa May gave an impression, but chose her words carefully. Did Boris Johnson speak before he thought?
Probably, yes, but I don't see why all the concentration is upon Boris Johnson and not about the responsibility for this terrible act. It may well be that Boris Johnson was not very careful in his choice of words, but Theresa May was certainly careful in her choice of words, and surely that's what we should be looking at. Who was responsible? And all the evidence points to the Russian state and indeed to the president, unless, of course, we have a situation where the president is not in control of his own supplies of nerve gas.
Which is very possible, and Stephen, I repeat the point that, sources who knew Russia well after the wall came down said all sorts of things, including nerve agent went missing back in 1993. Stephen, a lot of passion, a lot of conviction there from you. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:46.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
What can be done to deal with the surge in violent crime as the murder rate rises day by day? Is the problem down to a lack of stop and search?
Clive Bull on LBC.
So, I think you might have forgotten about me. I'm up here on the ceiling. Your smoke alarm? Maybe I've slipped your mind, but the thing is, I might not be working. That means I might not be able to warn you if there's a fire. I know I sound anxious, and you might not realise it's a matter of life and death. But if you think about it, it kind of is. So, how about you just press my button, make me beep, then we can all rest easy. What do you reckon?
Smoke alarms. They need to work to keep you safe. Press to test, monthly is best.
It's in my hair, my eyebrows, it's even up my nose. They make painting look easy on the telly, but let me tell you, it's not. The wall looks like it's been finger painted by a giant child. Who's going to rescue this? Oh, relax. It's Trust a Trader. Actual professionals who know what they're doing and don't leave the place looking like, my face. Now I can concentrate on the important stuff. Whispering peach or dirty mayonnaise. Visit trustatrader.com.
Trustatrader.com. Vision Consulting Chartered Accountants have seen astonishing growth over the years. So now, their ever-expanding client base means they're looking for remarkable people to join the Vision Consulting team in all areas of the business. In particular, they have immediate start vacancies for senior tax directors and payroll clerks. But they'd love to hear from anyone with a proven track record in accountancy. For a bright new future, visit visionconsulting.co.uk and apply today.
Namaste. Welcome to Mala, London's unique Indian dining experience. Located at the historic St Catherine's Docks, the hidden jewel of London. Marvel at the authentic antiques, murals and paintings from India's rich history. Then enjoy the finest Indian cuisine, traditionally prepared with recipes that have been handed down through the centuries. For a truly authentic taste of India, visit malarestaurant.com.
Ocean Credit Card.
If you're looking for credit, go to checkocean.co.uk and see in seconds if you'll be accepted for an Ocean credit card before you apply. Checking doesn't affect your credit rating, and with a credit limit of up to £1,500, it's a no-brainer. Go to checkocean.co.uk right now and get an answer in seconds. 39.9% APR representative variable. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One is the exclusive lender.
Checkocean.co.uk.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from Washington, only on LBC.
Well, some very strong views around this, very strong views about the Foreign Office deleting a tweet about Boris Johnson no longer saying it's categorical that it's the Russians that did it, but getting engaged now in a war of words with Corbyn. Strong emotion being shown. Rajiski says on Facebook, why delete tweets? Because they've been exposed as having no concrete evidence or proof that says made in Russia. Peter says GCHQ might have information to back up the results, but sources might not be safe to reveal as a loss of intelligence or putting someone at risk. Peter, I understand that, but I take you back to the statement that was put out yesterday, you know, and what the Foreign Office said yesterday. None of this changes the fact that it is our assessment that Russia was responsible. If they had really good intelligence, Peter, I believe they would have used a stronger word than assessment. Roger in Brentwood says, sad to hear, Nigel, you're peddling the lie that there's no evidence. I thought you were better than that. Well, Roger, if you've got the evidence, matey, 0345 6060 973. We'd love to hear from you. Most of all, though, Boris Johnson would love to hear from you, because this might dig him out of a hole. Alice is calling from Edinburgh, and a new caller to LBC. Alice, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Hi.
Hi there. So, what do you make of it all?
So I just want to make a quick comment. I think it was absolutely irresponsible for Boris Johnson to first make a comment and then delete the tweet. Like, what's going on? Because initially I thought if it's in a movie and you come up with, you know, an easy and obvious conclusion, that's probably wrong. And also, it's like, you know, they're treating us as stupid. It sounds as if the government has got too much on its hands, and it found a perfect enemy, a scapegoat, and just went for it, and just make me feel very unsure about the government right now. Yeah.
Well, Alice, they did go for it. You're absolutely right. And she looked, for a period of time, stronger, more self-confident herself in this country than she's ever been since she became Prime Minister. Remember turning up at the crime scene and fist-bumping a member of the public in Salisbury. Yeah. And then, you know, and then she goes to the European summit, and all right, they're split down the middle, but half of them support her. Trump's America supports her. I mean, actually, you could say, Alice, that pointing the finger at Russia, the way in which she and Boris in particular have done it, did raise their ratings, didn't they?
Actually, I think I understand why a political leader needs to do certain things in order to get, you know, people's vote and confidence. I understand that all. I'm just not confident with the way they do it, especially in this kind of situations where they, you know, treating us as if we're fools and the Russians as fools. I mean, if they really did it, I think by all means they would have done it better. They're not stupid. And also, I think the whole tweeting and deleting tweeting is just absolutely stupid. And it reminds me of the, you know, conversations we've been having, do we need a second referendum? It's the government's word that people can't trust nowadays, and it's very worrying.
Well, at very best, Alice, at very best, a Foreign Office tweet telling us this stuff was produced in Russia, then being removed a couple of weeks later, at best, it's amateur. So, Alice, your faith in politicians is diminishing, yeah?
A little bit, and I'm a bit worrying because I'm not from the UK, but I've been here for a while. I'm thinking about settling. I'm originally from China, and it's just very different how, my experience of government doing things, whether your word is your bond, you don't change it, so I'm actually...
Well, at least we have a bit more democracy here, Alice, than they have in China, wouldn't you say?
I wouldn't understand it probably that way. I think democracy works the best when it suits its own situation. Also, I want to just add a quick comment. Since I came here, I've been here for a couple of years, and I feel that people I've encountered in my daily life seem to have some sort of misunderstanding of what's going on outside Europe and UK. And it's interesting because all I interact with are really highly educated people, but still they seem to have a very interesting understanding of what's going on outside.
We've become obsessed in this country that Europe is the be-all and end-all, and I hope Brexit will make us look and seek bigger, better, broader horizons. Alice, great call. Thank you very much indeed. Nigel, it's not the fault of Porton Down. Sorry, is this not the fault of Porton Down giving wrong information to Boris in the first place, says Robert from Upchurch in Kent. Well, Robert, it may be. It may be. I don't know the answer to that. But somewhere within Boris Johnson, the Foreign Office and Porton Down, they were giving us certainty that this was Russian-made material a couple of weeks ago, and on the back of that, and given the historical evidence and the Litvinenko poisoning and all the things that many people have said, quite rightly this evening, about Russia's track record, this was used to convince the international community and to make our leader, Theresa May, look strong for the first time ever on the world stage. Something, Robert, is very badly wrong somewhere. I can't put my finger exactly where it is. Paul is calling from Bromley. Good evening, Paul.
Nigel, evening. It's so typical of you to play the man and not the ball. You've got a problem with Boris. You've got this sick admiration for Putin. So
no.
Anything, any way that you can bring it back to something to do with Brexit, you're all over it. Boris is on the front foot attacking people like Corbyn and clearly yourself, who, the fifth column is alive and well in this country. And obviously you've drifted into that. The point is that categoric might not have been the right word, but the evidence is absolutely overwhelming. And anything that makes Theresa May and the UK government look strong, it grates you. And that's why having an objective conversation is just, you can't do it, because you play the man on the ball, bring everything
Paul,
back to Brexit.
Let me ask you something. If the evidence is overwhelming, why did they delete the tweet?
Well, you just had a perfect explanation. GCHQ may have the person that done it. They might be following right now. You don't know. There could be lots of reasons the intelligence can't be put in black and white in front of everyone in this country. But the point
why delete the tweet, Paul?
We live in a country where the benefit of the doubt is given to someone like Putin.
No, we're not giving Putin the benefit of the doubt. What we're saying,
no.
What we're saying is the government jumped the gun on this, went way too far, used language, told us things were facts when they were not, and that actually is pretty rash and leads to a distrust in our leaders, Paul.
What evidence have you got there? There's no facts behind it.
Well, I've seen today, Paul, the Foreign Office delete a tweet telling us that it was absolutely certain that this agent was made in Russia. That's the evidence I've got that suggests to me that maybe the government jumped the gun.
No. You don't know what other pieces of evidence are out there that the government are in control of that you just don't know. And to give the benefit of the doubt against Theresa May, who you clearly dislike, and the fact that her rating or her strength has been shown, and she's got an alliance together against this, grates you. You can't.
No, it doesn't, Paul. Look, I don't. I want Theresa May to deliver us Brexit. I fear Corbyn being our Prime Minister for all sorts of reasons. But you know what, Paul? Just once or twice, over the course of the last 20 years, whether it's going to war in Libya, whether it's going to war in Iraq, or many other things, just once or twice, Corbyn's caution has proved to be a better route than the gung-ho approach of the Conservatives, who love to go to war and bomb people and do all sorts of things. I am not a Corbyn supporter, I'm not a Putin supporter, but I do think he makes a pretty fair point in saying and urging caution. That is my view. Anyway, we've run out of time. Huge passions all round on this. I'll be back tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. Coming up at 10 tonight, it's going to be Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. Coming up at